Hi, my name is Lester, Ioannis 1, and this is a sharing about how until recently I was the only Salesian in Singapore. I took the confirmation name Ioannis from the Latin form of the name John from St. John Bosco. When I was small, my parents brought several illustrated children's books on the lives of the saints. I was not really interested in any of them except the story of St. John Bosco. From a young age, I was fascinated by this boy, Don Bosco, when he was young, and his life and words. His words and actions left a deep impression on me, and I wanted to become just like Don Bosco. Unfortunately, some things happened that seemed to derail my plans. When I was in primary school, my mother fell ill from cancer. Very quickly, her health deteriorated, and I saw her suffer about 2 years, going bald from chemotherapy, vomiting, wetting her bed, and so on, because she can't get up by herself, and crying from pain and humiliation. Then, one day, about 2 months before I turned 12, my mother passed away. I did not get to say goodbye. My mother was my world, and she was the person whom I loved most, and who loved me most. And she was the only person I felt that I could really talk to or who really understood me. Now, suddenly, there was a big gap in my life. Soon after my mother passed away, my brothers and I also started to see my father less and less. Later on, we realized he was also spending time with a lady who would later become our stepmother. Life became even more challenging after that. Because of these family struggles, you can say I looked for love in the wrong places. I became what was known in Singapore as a Far East kid. We would hang out at Far East Plaza Shopping Centre every day, and some of the things we were up to were no good. Even then, even in that tumultuous time, while I hung out at Far East Plaza on weekdays, I would go for youth ministry on Friday nights and go for mass and hang out in church over the weekend. Over time, my positive influences from youth ministry helped me to realize that God was waiting for me to make healthier choices in life. As I grew older and spiritually, I realized that I had drifted from the idea and the ideal to be Don Bosco. I felt that I had strayed very far in my life and I felt ashamed. But I also started to wonder about Don Bosco and the order that he started, the Salesians of Don Bosco. Ironically, the Salesians are in almost every country except Singapore or even neighboring Malaysia then. It took me a few years searching on the internet, trying different emails before I finally found someone who responded to me. Providentially, that person was Philip Yu, World Councillor for East Asia Oceania region. Philip and later on Father Butstaff Clement were pleasantly surprised to know of me and answered my various questions and sent me much reading material on the Salesians and the preventive system. And I lapped everything up. The more I learned, the more I loved. About 2 years later, there was a regional congress of Salesian cooperators in Macau, and Philip invited me. The congress moved me deeply, and I was especially touched by the sharings of Japan, Mongolia, and Timor-Leste. I was also struck by the familiar character of the Salesian spirituality and approach. There in Macau, Philip encouraged me to take the promise and to live out my vocation as a Salesian cooperator. It was the most significant moment for me in my life, other than my confirmation. Being the sole Salesian and sole cooperator in Singapore has not been easy. I faced many challenges, even in trying to persuade the bishops in Singapore simply to list the Salesians in the Archdiocesan directory. Unfortunately, I've also had many challenges in my life, particularly in my work and family situations, which have also made it difficult for me to do much more. Nonetheless, Salesianity and especially Don Bosco's preventive system has transformed my thinking and my approach to youth ministry and catechesis. And I believe that it has had some impact on the young people whom I had served. It is also at least partly due to Don Bosco that in 2019, I felt called to do more for the troubled and at-risk young in Singapore, and I left my career in the media as a writer and editor to enter into social services, and I started working in a boys' home for boys who had been abused. It has now been 5 years since I started from scratch in social services, but I ask you to pray for me as I still face big challenges and my path is not so clear. I'm not sure if you understand what it's like to be the only Salesian in Singapore with no Salesian parish, no Salesian centre, no Salesian organisation or infrastructure, no oratory and so on, except myself. As mentioned, sadly, also with my many challenges, it has been greatly limited in terms of what I can do. It is also easy to be disconnected from the larger Salesian community being alone here. Thanks be to God, about 3 years ago, we received only the second Salesian from Singapore, Sister Charlene. And she's the first daughter of Mary Hub of Christians from Singapore. Sister Charlene experienced the Salesian work and mission on a mission trip that she had gone on. And she's currently based in Cambodia. Some of you may have had the blessing to encounter her. I continue to serve in my vocation in social services and in a limited way in terms of catechesis in the Rite of Christian Initiation for Youth, or RCIY, in the Parish of Risen Christ. While it has been greatly challenging, I hope more young people can come to know about Don Bosco in the future, and the Salesian spirituality as well, and the Salesian love to transform souls. Again, I ask you for your prayers for Sister Charlene and I as we continue to live out our Salesian vocation in our unique but limited ways. With the grace of God and with the help of Don Bosco and Mary Hub of Christians, I believe we can make some difference. Thank you. God bless you all.